Hi, I'm Jefferson Drexler, and this is Parent Like You Mean It, the podcast where we talk about, well, taking a peek at the past in order to hopefully get a clearer vision of the future as we strive forward in parenting. Which brings me to this question: how did we get here? Now, that's a question that's been considered throughout the history of mankind, from the Ancient of Days and quite often in the last few years here in the United States. Yet still, I don't think that we really ponder this enough. How did we get here? Can we ever get back to where we were? Should we? Do we really want to? I mean, do we want it bad enough to do the hard things that need to be done? And if so, where or when is it that we want to revert back to? Confused yet? I know I am. But I do have a theory, though. And I'll admit, I have borrowed it from others, so I can't claim that it's entirely my own original idea. I probably learned its fundamental principles in college, and if you're not being indoctrinated in college, what good is it, right? Anyways, here we go. Going back to my grandparents' generation, the greatest generation, and even the silent generation which followed right behind them, these were people who suffered through the Great Depression, saved the world from Axis power tyranny, and dreamed of a great big beautiful tomorrow for their posterity. Generally speaking, they wanted their children, the baby boomers, to have what they didn't have. My grandparents grew up with very, very little, so when my grandpas came home from World War II and started their families, they simply wanted their kids to not have to go without. Forgive the double negative. Ideally, their world would have a stable roof over their heads. The kids would have 3 square meals each day. They'd have stable schools to attend during the week and a structured church to attend on Sundays. In other words, everything that they didn't have, my grandparents didn't have while they were growing up. The baby boomers enjoyed that. Now, my parents didn't suffer in the same way as their parents at all. And while their lives were far from perfect, they were given what their parents never had and in turn wanted more for their kids. Overall, they worked hard to give their kids, my generation, everything that we needed. It wasn't uncommon for kids my age, even us poor kids, to play Little League and other youth sports, to have a mom in the workforce so that mom and dad, and eventually us kids, could have our own cars. And the roads were paved for more of us than any other generation in the past to even go to college. They gave us everything we needed. Not bad for a bunch of hippies. As we, Gen X, grew up and traded in our parachute pants and grunge jeans and flannels, well, some of us traded them in for more respectable office attire, we started forming our own goals for what we wanted for our kids. However, sociologically, there was also a unique specter that haunted us since we were little. You see, not only were we the first latchkey generation, but we were also the first group of kids in America who grew up every morning as we poured our cereal staring at the faces of other kids who had gone missing. Right there alongside Tony the Tiger was Jimmy Lipper, missing from Pacoima. He was the same age as me and wearing the same t-shirt that I had in my drawer. This was what kids of my generation stared at as our moms told us about the Hot Pockets waiting for us in the freezer while they went off to work. Coupled with that was the new curriculum that waited for us at school, designed to build our self-esteem. I remember being spoon-fed Stuart Smalley-esque daily affirmations and watching Free to Be You and Me videos. I can only assume these were partly designed to counter the child abduction horrors that we gazed at upon our breakfast table. Great job, you stupid hippies. Now, then, 20 years later, it was up to us to form a worldview to instill in our kids. So, if Grandma and Grandpa gave our parents anything that, or I should say everything that they didn't have, and our parents gave us everything that we needed, it's only logical that we, via incredibly overprotective methods, strove to give our kids everything they wanted. Want a safe school to attend and nice friends there? I'll be watching over you at the playground just to make sure that it happens. Want good grades throughout your education? I'll be volunteering in your class and make sure that I can keep an eye on that teacher of yours. Want a college degree to land you your dream job in the self-discovery industry? Well, I'll be right there by your side, or hovering over you like a helicopter if that's what it takes. And now we have a new generation growing up under a new standard. Everything that mom and dad went without, or everything you need, or everything you want, those tropes have all been done. Now, kids and their kids are feeling entitled to, quote, everything you deserve. And by the way, you deserve everything you set your mind to. But we'll save entitlement for another episode. So, how did we get here? Well, we grabbed a hold of society's steering wheel and we drove America's minivan right toward the cliff. That's how. Which brings me to today. How did we get here? How did we get to a point where, even in the face of data from Johns Hopkins University and from other highly developed nations around the world, data points to pre-pandemic life returning as early as April 2021. Yet we still have leaders claiming that we will need to wear masks and forego group activities until 2022? Since the beginning of January, COVID cases in the United States have dropped nearly 80% across the country. And locally, at the hospital where my wife is an RN, cases spiked up in the 90s numbers, like 90 cases at our hospital. That was last year. And then the latest surge that we just experienced, they blew the roof off the joint at over 200 cases. It was bad. But now, their case numbers have plummeted into the 40s, and they continue to go down every single week. Yet still, we're told that schools across the country can't reopen until all of our children are vaccinated. Children who are more endangered by the typical flu than COVID. We're told that churches can't open for weekly worship services. As one local pastor put it, he said, "It just doesn't make sense. The risk is just too high." And banish the idea of ever going to the movie theater again, or a Major League Baseball game, or a concert, or Disneyland. It's just not safe. If that's the case, when will life ever be safe? Will we ever be 100% secure from anyone ever contracting the coronavirus? The short answer is no. Now, when it comes to safety, one guy that I admire immensely is Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy. He started using the phrase safety third as a reminder that safety is ultimately an individual responsibility and much more complex than an absolute first priority. See, this is the way he put it. I'll do my Mike Rowe impersonation. He said,
"Safety first is the stuff of idiocy. It allows us to begin to believe that somebody other than us might care more about our well-being than we do. And the minute we buy into that nonsense, then we embrace the warm grip of complacency." So no, safety is not the enemy, but if you make it the priority, then let's just wrap ourselves in bubble pack and drive at speeds approaching 5 miles an hour and never assume anything that could ever be confused with risk. The unintended consequences of magnifying a virtue to a place it doesn't deserve to occupy will always come back to kick us in the throat.
That was Mike Rowe. In other words, at some point, and according to many experts, including Martin Makary at Johns Hopkins, that point may be as soon as April. We're talking just a matter of weeks. At some point, we need to start assuming some risk in life and leave our societal health up to our own individual decisions. In other words, live with liberty as we are always intended to. The days of helicopter parenting, not just by us Gen Xers, but by our federal, state, local governments, they've got to become days gone by, long gone stories of our ancient 21st century history. But as I asked earlier, do we want it enough to do the hard things that need to be done? We say we long for the good old days, but are we willing to live with calculated risks? Are we willing to rebel against those in power and want to retain their power and send our kids out into the park to play a game of flag football? Are we brave enough to send our kids to, or better yet, host a birthday party? Or are we going to continue to spend one sleepless night after another wrapping ourselves up in fear, worrying about Baba Yaga attacking our loved ones? That's a John Wick reference for those of you who look it up, you'll see. Now, I understand that there are those of us out there who have extreme extenuating circumstances. You're too young to get the vaccine, but you have compromised immune systems, or you simply have too many concerns about the vaccine to get the shot. I get it. But the hard truth is that when we're addressing the health of the mass populace, we need policies that address the vast majority. If you're in the scant minority who can't take the risks, then definitely you do you. Meanwhile, for the sake of liberty, for the sake of our and our kids' emotional and psychological well-being, for the sake of our economy, and what used to be known as the American way, well, let's celebrate Let's celebrate 2021. And let's do it in person, together. For Parent Like You Mean It, I'm Jefferson Drexler.